In a small town nestled between thick, shadowy woods, there was an old, abandoned house that everyone whispered about. The Grayling House had stood empty for decades, its paint peeling and windows darkened by years of neglect. It was said that the last family to live there had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the faint echo of laughter and the soft creaking of floorboards. One autumn evening, a group of friends, Jake, Sarah, Mark, and Emily, decided to explore the house, emboldened by a mix of curiosity and bravado. They packed flashlights, a camera, and a half-eaten bag of chips, and made their way to the looming structure as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows. As they stepped through the rotting front door, a musty smell filled the air, mingling with a faint, floral perfume that seemed out of place. The foyer was littered with dust-covered furniture, and the once grand chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. The group split up, excited to document their adventure. Jake and Sarah headed to the kitchen, where the old stove still had a rusting pot on it, the contents long since evaporated. "Look at this," Sarah called, holding up a faded photograph of a smiling family. "They look so happy." But the longer she stared, the more the faces seemed to twist into something grotesque, almost as if they were silently screaming. Meanwhile, Mark and Emily ventured upstairs, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. They found a small bedroom, the walls lined with peeling wallpaper adorned with faded roses. On the bedside table lay a dusty journal. Emily flipped it open, her fingers brushing against the brittle pages. The entries grew increasingly frantic, detailing strange noises at night and a creeping dread that filled the house. "Let's get out of here," Mark said, glancing nervously around. But before they could leave, the sound of a child's laughter echoed through the hallway. It was a haunting giggle, sweet yet chilling. They exchanged looks of disbelief. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, her heart racing. The four friends regrouped, sharing their findings. Sarah showed them the photograph while Emily read aloud from the journal. Suddenly, the house seemed to come alive. Doors creaked open on their own, and shadows danced just out of sight. The air grew colder, their breath visible as they huddled together. Jake, trying to lighten the mood, suggested they take a group selfie to commemorate their adventure. They gathered together, the dim beam of the flashlight illuminating their nervous smiles. Just as they were about to snap the picture, a chill swept through the room. The camera's flash went off, revealing a figure standing just behind them. A blurry, indistinct shape, too faint to identify. "Did you see that?" Mark shouted, but when they turned, nothing was there. Panic set in, and they raced down the stairs, the laughter following them, growing louder, echoing off the walls. They burst through the front door, the chill of the evening air hitting their faces like a slap. Once outside, they paused to catch their breath, laughing nervously. But as they looked back, the house stood still and silent, except for one thing. A single window on the second floor flickered with a warm light, even though they knew no one was inside. That night, as they drove home, each of them felt an unsettling weight settle in their chests. The laughter echoed in their minds, a reminder of what they had awakened. In the days that followed, Sarah would sometimes catch a whiff of that same floral perfume in her room, while Mark dreamt of the children he'd never seen. Months later, the friends swore they would never return to the Grayling House. But sometimes, when the moon was high, the laughter could still be heard, inviting, luring, waiting for the next brave souls to uncover its secrets. As the weeks turned into months, life returned to a semblance of normalcy for Jake, Sarah, Mark, and Emily. They tried to forget their chilling encounter, but it lingered in the corners of their minds like a shadow that refused to dissipate. Each of them experienced strange occurrences, flickering lights, misplaced items, and dreams filled with the sounds of laughter. One night, Sarah received a text from Emily. "You won't believe what I found," it read. Intrigued, Sarah agreed to meet at Emily's house. When she arrived, she found Emily poring over an old newspaper clipping spread out on her kitchen table. The headline read, "Family vanishes without a trace from Grayling House. Mystery endures." "What did you find?" Sarah asked, leaning closer. Emily pointed to a grainy photograph accompanying the article. It showed the same family from the faded photograph in the house. The parents, a boy and a girl, all smiles. "Look at the boy," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He looks just like the figure we saw in the selfie." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. "What do you mean?" "I think he's trying to tell us something," Emily replied, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. What if they didn't just vanish? What if they're still trapped in there? The next day, fueled by a mix of curiosity and dread, Sarah called the others. They gathered at Emily's house again, discussing their experiences and the new discoveries. Mark hesitated, but the allure of solving the mystery pulled him in. "We have to go back," he said, glancing around the room. That evening, under a moon that hung low and ominous, they set off once more to the Grayling House, armed with flashlights, a digital recorder, and a sense of purpose. As they approached, the air seemed to thrum with energy, the woods around them crackling with an unseen tension. Inside, the atmosphere felt different, heavier, almost electric. They ventured to the same bedroom where Emily had found the journal. This time, the air was charged with anticipation. Jake set up the recorder, hoping to capture anything unusual. "If there's anyone here," he said, his voice wavering slightly, "we want to help you." They waited in silence, hearts pounding, as the recorder captured the ambient sounds of the house. Creaks and groans like whispers from the past. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and a cold breeze brushed past them. The lights from their flashlights flickered, casting elongated shadows on the walls. Then, a voice, a child's voice, came through the recorder, faint but clear. "Help us, please," Emily gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. "Did you hear that? Play it back," Sarah urged, her heart racing. They listened in disbelief as the voice repeated, a chorus of desperation echoing through the room. "Help us, please." "What do we do?" Mark said, anxiety creeping into his voice. "I think we need to find out what happened to them," Emily suggested, her determination growing. "There has to be something here that can help us." They split up again, each searching for clues. Sarah made her way to the kitchen, her flashlight illuminating the remnants of the past. A half-eaten apple, its skin shriveled and brown, and the old pot that seemed to beckon her closer. As she examined it, she noticed something glimmering at the bottom. It was a small locket, tarnished but still intact. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a picture of the family, just the mother and the two children. The locket felt warm in her hand, pulsing with an energy that sent shivers down her spine. Meanwhile, Mark had stumbled upon a hidden door in the basement, partially concealed behind stacks of old crates. He called out to the others, excitement mixing with dread. "Guys, come here. I think I found something." When they gathered around, Mark pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, but the allure of uncovering the truth was too strong to resist. With flashlights in hand, they descended the stairs. The walls were damp and cold, and a faint flickering light appeared at the bottom. As they reached the final step, they found themselves in a dimly lit room filled with old toys, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, wooden trains, and dusty stuffed animals. In the center stood a small table, and on it lay an intricately carved box. Its surface was covered in strange symbols and images, almost as if it were a puzzle waiting to be solved. As they approached, they could hear the faint echoes of laughter, growing louder as they neared. "This feels wrong," Jake muttered, glancing around nervously. "We have to open it," Emily insisted, drawn to the box. It might hold the key to freeing them. Just as she reached for the lid, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights. Darkness enveloped them, and the laughter transformed into a cacophony of cries. Panic surged as they fumbled in the pitch blackness, each breath a whisper of fear. Then, a voice rang out, louder and clearer than before. "You shouldn't have come back." In that moment, the friends understood that the Grayling House held more than just a mystery. It harbored something ancient and restless. a force that fed off their fear and curiosity. And they had awakened it. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. The darkness enveloped them, thick and suffocating, as the voice echoed ominously. You shouldn't have come back. It felt as if the very walls were alive, pulsating with the energy of something sinister. Emily, trembling, reached for the box again. We need to open it, she shouted over the rising cacophony, her voice barely breaking through the oppressive silence. Wait, Jake yelled, fear seeping into his tone. We don't know what's inside. But Emily's determination was unyielding. If we can find out what happened to them, maybe we can help. She took a deep breath and lifted the lid, a soft creak reverberating through the room. As the box opened, a shimmering light poured out, illuminating the basement with an ethereal glow. Inside, they found an assortment of objects. A broken toy soldier, a cracked mirror, and a small diary, its pages yellowed and fragile. But what caught their attention the most was a small, intricately carved figure. An old wooden doll, its eyes seemingly watching them. As Emily reached for the doll, the laughter morphed into a haunting wail, echoing around them. The temperature plummeted, and an unseen force seemed to push them back. Get the box closed, Mark shouted, but it was too late. The moment Emily touched the doll, the room erupted in chaos. The walls trembled, and a whirlwind of whispers filled the air. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, darting just beyond the light's reach. Jake and Mark struggled to pull Emily away, but her fingers clung to the doll, as if it were the only thing tethering her to reality. Let go, Emily, Sarah cried, panic rising in her voice. We need to get out of here. In that moment, Emily's eyes glazed over, and she whispered, They're trapped. We have to help them. Her voice was distant, as if someone else was speaking through her. The friends exchanged terrified glances. Mark, sensing the urgency, grabbed the diary from the box. Maybe this will tell us what to do. He flipped it open, the pages brittle and fragile, filled with hurried scrawl. It's a journal. It talks about the family's last days here. They felt something watching them, something that wanted them to stay. The room trembled as if in response. The shadows grew denser, closing in around them. They could hear the cries of the children, their voices mingling with the wind, begging for release. Emily, listen to us, Jake urged, shaking her lightly. You have to come back. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, revealing a chaotic scene. The basement was filled with swirling mist, and the doll glowed with an unearthly light. The shadows took shape, manifesting as figures. A woman and two children, their faces etched with despair. Help us! They cried in unison, their voices melding into a chilling symphony. We are trapped here. Mark's heart raced as he read from the diary, searching for a clue. It says here that the family became part of the house, their souls bound by a curse. The doll, it's the key. What do we do with it? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. We need to break the curse, Mark replied, frantically scanning the pages. It says we have to confront the source of their pain. We must let them know they're free to move on. The shadows closed in, their faces shifting from despair to anger. You cannot help us. You are not worthy, they shrieked, their voices echoing off the walls, drowning out the whispers of the children. Emily's grip on the doll tightened, her eyes now ablaze with an unsettling fervor. You can't hold us here, she shouted, the words spilling from her mouth as if they weren't her own. We will not let you take us. The figures recoiled, their cries turning into furious howls. The basement shook violently, and the friends struggled to stay upright. Mark, read faster, Jake urged, panic flooding his veins. The bond is strong, but love can break it. Mark read aloud, his voice steady despite the chaos. To set them free, you must acknowledge their pain and help them forgive. Suddenly, Emily's voice shifted again, softening. You're not alone anymore. We're here to help you. You can let go. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, a warmth emanating from the doll. The shadows hesitated, their angry forms flickering. The children's faces softened, their expressions shifting from anger to confusion. But we don't know how. The woman's voice wavered, mingling with the wind. "Tell us your story," Sarah shouted, stepping forward despite the fear gripping her heart. "Let us help you remember." In that moment, the figures hesitated, their forms wavering like a candle flame. The laughter faded, replaced by a haunting silence. With renewed resolve, Mark urged them on. "Remember the love you had for each other. Focus on the joy before the fear." The shadows flickered, and for a brief moment, the room was filled with the warmth of childhood memories. Sunlit days, laughter echoing in the garden, and the smell of fresh-baked cookies wafting through the air. The family's bond shone through the darkness. The woman spoke, her voice trembling but clearer now. "We lost our way. We were afraid. We thought we could never leave. Help us find the light again." The children pleaded, their voices fragile yet hopeful. Emily, still holding the doll, stepped forward. "You have to forgive yourselves. It's time to let go. You're not trapped anymore. You can be free." As the words left her lips, the shadows began to dissolve, the figures transforming into wisps of light. The doll pulsed in her hands, the warmth radiating like a heartbeat. With a final echoing cry of "Help us!" the shadows surged toward the doll, enveloping it in a brilliant light. The basement brightened, and the oppressive air began to lift, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "Now let go!" Mark shouted, hope igniting within him. The light grew brighter until it enveloped them all, and the echoes of laughter returned, not as cries of anguish, but as joyous sounds of release. The shadows dissolved completely, leaving behind a radiant glow that filled the room. And then silence. The friends stood in the now peaceful basement, breathless, the box and the doll still warm in Emily's hands. They had faced something dark and powerful, but in that moment, they realized the true strength of their bond. But before they could fully process what had happened, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the light once more. A new voice whispered, "Your journey is far from over." Panic surged again, but this time it was mixed with determination. The friends looked at each other, knowing they had only begun to scratch the surface of the Grayling House's secrets. With hearts pounding, they braced themselves for whatever was to come next, prepared to face the unknown together. The darkness returned, wrapping around them like a shroud, but now it felt different, less suffocating, more alive. The glow from the doll faded, leaving them in a dim, shadowy basement filled with the remnants of their encounter. A lingering warmth remained in the air, yet the new voice sent shivers down their spines. "Your journey is far from over," it echoed, resonating through the walls. "What does that mean?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Mark, still clutching the diary, flipped through the pages. "There has to be more to this place," he said, his eyes scanning the scrawled notes. "It talks about a cycle, the house feeding off fear and regret, trapping those who come too close." Emily looked down at the doll, which now felt heavier in her hands. "Maybe it's not just the family. Maybe there are others, more souls trapped here." As if in response, the shadows coalesced, swirling around them like a thick fog. The air crackled with tension, and faint silhouettes flickered at the edges of their vision, figures of people long forgotten, their faces twisted in anguish. "We need to find out who they are," Jake said, a new resolve igniting in him. "If we can help them too, maybe we can finally break this cycle." They moved deeper into the basement, the shadows shifting and pulling back as they ventured forth. Each step felt heavier, as if the house itself was weighing them down, testing their resolve. "Stay close," Mark instructed, gripping the diary tightly. "We'll need to work together to confront whatever's left here." At the far end of the basement, they discovered another door, slightly ajar. The wood creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room lined with dusty shelves. Each shelf held forgotten relics, old toys, faded photographs, and books with tattered spines. But one object caught their attention, a cracked mirror, its surface marred but still reflecting light. As they approached, a flicker of movement caught Jake's eye. "Look," he pointed. In the mirror, they could see fleeting faces of those who had once lived here, their expressions filled with sorrow. Are they trapped in there? Emily asked, her heart racing. We need to find out, Mark said, his fingers brushing the mirror's edge. Maybe it can show us how to help them. As he touched the surface, the reflections shifted, coalescing into a vivid scene. They saw the family from the earlier photograph, sitting around a dinner table, laughter filling the air. But the scene darkened, and the family's expressions changed from joy to fear. Shadows crept into the room, obscuring their faces as the laughter turned to frantic shouts. Why are they so afraid? Sarah asked, breathless as she watched. Mark squinted at the mirror, trying to decipher the images. It's like they were trying to escape something, but they never made it out. Suddenly, the mirror cracked, a jagged line splitting the reflection in two. The shadows writhed within, their forms morphing into anguished faces, mouths open in silent screams. The friends stumbled back, fear clawing at their hearts. Get away from it, Jake shouted, pulling Emily back just in time as the shadows surged towards them, angry and desperate. Look, Mark cried, pointing at the diary. There's a passage about facing your fears, about finding closure. We need to connect with them. Connect how? Sarah asked, her voice quaking. The love they had for each other. Emily shouted, her eyes wide with understanding. We need to show them they're not alone. We need to remind them of their joy. As the shadows pressed closer, swirling with an ominous intent, the friends formed a circle around the mirror. We're here, Mark called out, his voice steady. We want to help you. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Remember the joy you shared, Emily added, her voice rising above the chaos. Remember your love. The shadows hesitated, flickering as if unsure of their next move. The mirror pulsed with energy, a reflection of their intent. Images of laughter and sunlight returned, breaking through the darkness. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and from the depths of the shadows emerged the figures of the family. The parents and the two children, their faces still tinged with sadness but now softened by a glimmer of hope. You can help us? The mother asked, her voice a whisper, almost drowned out by the swirling darkness. Yes, Emily replied, stepping forward, the warmth of the doll radiating in her hands. You have to let go of your fear. We're here with you. You're not alone. The figures looked at one another, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. We don't know how, the father said, his voice cracking. The love you shared can guide you, Mark said, holding the diary tightly. Face your pain together. Remember the moments that brought you joy. As they spoke, the room seemed to vibrate with energy. The shadows began to recede, flickering like candle flames. The family's forms flickered in and out, caught between worlds. Take our hands, Emily urged, reaching out toward them. Together, we can find the light. Slowly, hesitantly, the family stepped forward, their ghostly hands stretching toward the circle. As they connected, the warmth surged through the friends, igniting a fierce light that began to push back the shadows. But just as hope began to rise, the darkness coiled around them again, more powerful than before. A booming voice echoed, resonating through the basement. You think you can break the cycle? This house is mine. The shadows surged, an angry tide threatening to pull them back into despair. Fear clawed at the edges of their minds, but the friends held firm, focusing on the light, on the love they shared and the love that still bound the family together. Together, Jake shouted, rallying their spirits. We can do this. As the figures of the family stepped closer, their expressions shifted from fear to resolve. They joined hands with the friends, creating a circle of strength that pulsed with warmth and light. Remember us, the mother cried. Remember our love. With that, the light surged, pushing back the darkness, shattering the chains that bound the family to the house. The shadows howled in fury, but the warmth of connection drowned out their cries, filling the basement with brilliant light. In that moment of unity, the air thickened with the essence of love, memories of laughter and joy flooding back into the hearts of the trapped souls. The darkness trembled, shrinking before the overwhelming force of their shared strength. But just as victory seemed within reach, a shadow darted forward, targeting Emily, the doll glowing fiercely in her hands. "You will not take them from me?" it shrieked, desperation in its voice. "No!" Mark yelled, reaching out as if he could physically hold back the darkness. The family's figures glowed brighter, their expressions fierce. "We are not yours," the father proclaimed, his voice merging with the friends. "We choose to be free." With a final surge of strength, the light erupted from their circle, flooding the room and enveloping the shadows. The screams of anguish echoed, and the basement shook violently, the walls trembling as the house itself protested the loss of its captives. "Hold on," Jake shouted, feeling the tremors beneath their feet. Just as the shadows began to dissolve, a blinding flash erupted, sending shockwaves through the room. The figures of the family merged with the light, their forms radiant and whole, embodying the love that had once bound them. The basement was transformed, the oppressive shadows now replaced by a soft, golden light that seemed to pulse gently. The remnants of the family were gone, but the warmth of their love lingered, creating an ethereal atmosphere that filled the room with a sense of hope. Yet, something still felt unresolved, a lingering tension that hinted at deeper mysteries. As the friends gathered themselves, they noticed the cracked mirror had changed. The surface now shimmered like water, reflecting not just their faces, but also images from the past and fragments of memories, laughter, sunlight, and the warmth of family gatherings. But beneath those joyful scenes, shadows flitted in the corners, remnants of lost souls still seeking release. "What just happened?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper as she examined the mirror. "Did we really free them?" "I think we did," Mark replied, but uncertainty crept into his voice. "But this place, it still feels alive." Emily, still holding the doll, felt a connection tugging at her. "There's something more here," she said, her eyes drawn back to the mirror. "It's like it wants us to see something." Jake stepped closer to the mirror, captivated by a swirling image that began to take form. "Look!" he exclaimed. "It's showing us something else." The mirror revealed a scene of the Grayling House in its early days, vibrant and full of life, a family happily moving in, laughter ringing through the halls. But the image began to darken as shadows crept into the frame, coiling around the edges like smoke. "What is that?" Sarah asked, a chill creeping up her spine. "They were never alone," Mark said, his voice low. "The house was always watching. There were others here before the family, others who never escaped." As they watched, the mirror flickered, revealing brief glimpses of past occupants, their faces twisted in despair, trapped in an endless cycle of fear. "This house is a beacon," Emily said, realization dawning. "It draws people in, feeds on their fear, and holds them captive." "Then we need to stop it," Jake declared, a fierce determination burning in his eyes. "We need to find a way to break the cycle for good." Mark flipped through the diary again, searching for answers. "There has to be a way to end this. If we can confront the source of the darkness, we might break the house's hold." Suddenly, the doll in Emily's hands began to vibrate, emitting a soft, warm glow. The shadows around them seemed to pulse in response, swirling as if drawn to the light. "What is it doing?" Jake asked, stepping back instinctively. "I think it's connected to the house's energy," Emily replied, holding it up. "Maybe it can lead us to the heart of this darkness." As she spoke, the mirror rippled, revealing a hidden door at the back of the basement, one they hadn't noticed before. It appeared slightly ajar, beckoning them forward with an almost hypnotic pull. "Let's go," Mark urged, stepping toward the door. The others exchanged glances, each feeling the weight of what lay ahead. Together, they approached, the air thick with anticipation. Inside, they found a narrow, winding staircase that descended into the depths of the earth. The atmosphere grew heavier with each step, the warmth of the doll contrasting sharply with the chill that enveloped them. The walls were damp, covered in an intricate tapestry of vines and roots, as if the house itself was a living entity. At the bottom, they reached a cavernous room filled with whispers. In the center stood an altar made of ancient stone, its surface covered in strange symbols and markings. The air crackled with energy, and at its center lay a dark crystal, pulsating ominously like a heartbeat. "This must be it," Mark said, stepping forward entranced. "The source of the house's power." Emily raised the doll, its light intensifying. "We need to break this," she said. "But how?" As if in response, the shadows that clung to the walls surged forward, swirling around them, forming the anguished faces of those lost to the house. "You think you can destroy us?" they cried in a chorus, their voices laced with anger and sorrow. The doll pulsed with energy, responding to their cries. "No!" Emily shouted, her voice strong. "We're here to set you free." The crystal flickered, reacting to the emotions in the room. The shadows wavered, caught between their fear and the hope Emily offered. "Remember the love you had," she implored. "We are not your enemies." As she spoke, memories flooded the chamber, swirling around the moments of joy, laughter, and love shared between families. The darkness shuddered, torn between the light and the shadows of the past. In a moment of clarity, Mark reached out and touched the crystal, feeling the pulse of energy surge through him. "We can end this together," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You don't have to hold on to your pain any longer." With a sudden burst of resolve, the friends formed a circle around the altar, holding hands. The doll's light expanded, illuminating the room with a radiant glow. The shadows shrieked, swirling in a furious tempest, but the warmth from the doll and the friends' determination pushed back against the darkness. The crystal began to crack, fissures spreading across its surface as the energy within surged. "Let go," Emily urged, focusing all her energy on the doll. "Let go of your fear." The shadows hesitated, and for a brief moment, a glimmer of hope pierced the darkness. "We are lost," one voice whispered, trembling with uncertainty. "No," Emily cried. "You are not lost. You are loved. Remember who you were." As if responding to her plea, the shadows hesitated, flickering between despair and the warmth of the memories they had lost. With a final, desperate cry, the crystal shattered, releasing a blinding light that engulfed the room. The shadows erupted in a chorus of anguish, but as the light enveloped them, their forms began to dissipate, transformed into shimmering motes of energy that danced through the air. The house trembled as if caught in a seismic shift, the walls vibrating with the release of years of pent-up anguish. Then, all at once, silence fell. The light dimmed, revealing the room now empty, the altar a pile of glowing dust. The doll lay at their feet, still radiating warmth but now silent. "We did it," Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. But as they took a moment to catch their breath, the air shifted again. The room felt different, lighter, but charged with a strange energy. The mirror shimmered one last time, reflecting not just their faces, but a new scene. A garden bathed in sunlight, filled with laughter and joy. "What is that?" Mark asked, stepping closer. It's a memory," Emily said, her heart racing. "But not just any memory. It's a memory of the house, before the darkness took hold. It's showing us what it could be again." Suddenly, the mirror began to swirl, the images shifting as if inviting them to step through. The friends exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and trepidation filling the air. "Should we?" Jake asked, the possibility of exploring this new world hanging in the balance. Before they could decide, the mirror pulsed again, and a voice whispered, clear and melodic, "Come and see what we have created." With hearts pounding and curiosity ignited, they took a collective breath. Together, they stepped toward the mirror, feeling the pull of the light as it enveloped them, guiding them toward a new beginning. As they crossed the threshold, the world around them transformed into a vibrant garden filled with flowers, sunlight, and the joyous laughter of children playing. The air was fragrant with blooming petals, and in that moment, they realized they had not just freed the souls trapped in the house. They had opened the door to a new chapter, one filled with hope, love, and the possibility of healing. The Grayling House stood behind them, its dark past behind closed doors, transformed into a beacon of light, a sanctuary for the lost, a testament to the power of love. And as the friends ventured deeper into the garden, they knew their journey was far from over. New mysteries awaited them, but this time, they were ready to face them together. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.